the anchor is Oxford and the anchor is the students. So we have always run two sort of events. One is through the Africa Society, which runs in May, and then one is through the business school. I think the key difference for us is where we anchor ours is on business, whether that is through startups and the impact of public policy and sort of how you engage with the governments and private sector. That for us is essentially what we focus on, as opposed to the other conference has a much broader reach that might go across a number of different themes, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in sort of arts and culture. I mean, we tailor our forum to obviously include those areas, but it always sort of comes down to sort of the business angle. So we work very closely. The Africa Society is a partner with us on ours, and we partner on theirs. The students collaborate and share insights. We have a lot of cross collaboration with speakers that have joined both of ours over the year. The umbrella is Oxford, and I think you can never have too many Africa conferences. We need to have more and more of these discussions, but I think for us, what is our anchors very much, it always comes down to business and impact from within. So whether you are working within a sort of startup or a global firm, your ability to have impact within an organization and utilize business for good and to essentially drive some of the change is what we focus on specifically in our forum as well.
Thank you, Tammy.
Hi, my name is Dr. Elsa Zakeng. I am co-founder and CEO of Soka Data. Soka Data is a health tech platform that aggregates siloed data specifically from women and ethnic minorities, or global majority populations, to provide insights to pharmaceutical companies to develop drugs that are efficacious. Now, Africa's place in the global economy really is one that is vast from a human capital perspective, from a technology advanced perspective, and really from that youthful, of course, perspective that we all know Africa to have. It is crucial that when we think about Africa's place in the global economy, we highlight what we already have. Yes, we have things like raw materials, which Africa has always been known for. But what we also have is knowledge, is innovation, because the problems that we face in Africa are different. And as Rebecca Enionchon said on the panel, necessity is the mother of invention. And so we have to solve problems at such speed and scale that are probably not seen anywhere else. And these technologies, if deployed rightfully and at scale, can be very transformative for the world. So I think that it comes down to us as Africans, both on continent and in the diaspora, being able to acknowledge the power that we do hold, being able to strike partnerships and deals that are equitable and profitable for the continent, and of course that are sustainable and support the ecosystems in Africa.
Soraya and Aisha, we know that we need to improve leadership in Africa, as MBA candidate here running this event. But what are your advice in terms of not just improving, but going beyond?
I mean, what I always say about leadership, and it surprises me that we do have some good leaders in Africa, but we also have a good number of leaders that have taken on this position with a selfish interest at heart. And I think for me, one of the things that I wonder all the time is how can you even be selfish where it's not selfishness, it's self-destruction, right? So it's looking at it from the perspective of not growing a place where your children, your grandchildren, your entire generation is going to call home. Taking resources from that place, bringing it to other places that would never identify with you. And I think when I think about our leadership and how sometimes it's not serving the African people, or I mean, in my case, I'm from a particular country, then how do you self-destruct? So what I say is, it's not about improving leadership. I think we have great leaders that have experience, that are educated. It's about asking yourself, how do I make this better for myself? And then by extension, other people. So it's about looking at it from a collective good perspective as against your own good, which in this case is not even serving you actually, because you're self-destructive.
I think there's a lot of as Rhea has rightly said, we have great leaders, and it's, for me, I think what I'm hearing on the underlay of that is the mindset shift that is necessary, where we're taking ownership. I think if there's anything that we as a continent, again going back to the talk yesterday, the dream of Africa versus the reality of Africans, we have to marry both of them. And there's this thing in our heads where, what does an Africa look like? That does not match the reality. And it's from the mindset shift that is necessary for people to actually take ownership. When you are wasting resources, or when you're causing harm to a certain community, you're not just doing that in isolation. It's a ripple effect. And if we feel more inclusive in decision making, if we embrace these indigenous cultures, because if we actually go back to our indigenous cultures, we're fundamentally a community people, and it's about going back to our roots of that community spirit. Indigenous systems, ways of doing things would help us embrace better leadership, so that, because the leaders are coming from our homes. They're not strangers. They're people that you went to school with. They're people that walk down your road. They're friends with your mom or your dad, or, so they're not outside of your community. How can we bring those people back to these indigenous cultures that we have, the community spirit, so that when they are representing us as leaders, they're not just representing themselves, they're representing a community.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dorothy Nyambi. I'm the president and CEO of the Mennonite Economic Development Associates, formerly known as MEDA. I'm based out of Canada. I'm the first African woman CEO for that organization. I'm just really proud, to represent my own continent of birth in that way, despite being based in Canada. We work in economic development, and after a long journey in international development, I finally believe that economic development is really one of the key areas where we need to go. I think very often, Africa has been looked upon as this place where people need to come into to do things, right? And I don't refuse that Africa needs to do things for itself, but Africa cannot do things for itself without being part of a bigger ecosystem. And that ecosystem, for Africa to succeed, it needs to prepare itself for Africa and for the world, right? So the needs of the world and those solutions need to come from Africa. Otherwise, Africa will continue to be a consumer society, and a society in which people come and extract from Africa to take elsewhere. And let me be practical about that, right? So Africa being part of the globe, doesn't matter where we are today, is so important. Because if you look at agri-value chains, educational value chains, health value chains, everything, we need to build the infrastructure on the continent that is going to then be the foundation upon which we build all these other things. And so without that, and without building that foundation to support the world, that foundation needs to support beyond Africa. I have to keep emphasizing, because Africans are the solutions for Africa and solutions for the world. So for me, it is really, we cannot talk about Africa in the next frontier without talking beyond Africa at this point in time. It will not be wise, and it will not be the best use of our resources. I think I want to speak to the person who has the idea, and I want to speak to the policy and decision makers in Africa. Because for the person who has the idea, who is out in the diaspora and so on, for that idea to actually be planted, can grow and turn from a plant to a tree to a forest, somebody needs to fix the enabling environment. So to the person who has the idea, I'll say, make sure that it is context specific, that you understand, figure out partnerships. If you're sitting in the diaspora, you may not understand the context as well. So who can you partner with who is already on the ground, who understands the context on a day-to-day basis better than you? To the people who are on the ground, who are the policy makers, in order for somebody who is sitting in the diaspora to come and invest, we need you to create the infrastructure, the enabling environment, right? If I want to take a nice internet cafe to my village, but there's no electricity, to my grandmother's village in Cameroon. There's very little that I can do. They can only learn on a generator for so much, this and all of those things. So we have opportunity about how do we build infrastructure? How do we begin to industrialize? So energy is going to be a big piece, and that is power. The road, transportation, and logistics is a big piece. Pharmaceutics is a big piece, right? So those are some key tenets of the things that I want the people, our leaders who are running the countries to do, so that the young person in the diaspora has an enabling environment in which they can come to plant a seed that will turn into a plant, into a tree, and to a forest. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Somebody else come, oh, you dead to me no more. Yeah, this thing don't be no mind. Me no want to do more. Please don't give me trouble.